5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Welcome to Sacrilicious with Robin and Snerts, a Simpsons review podcast. I'm your lovable known Snerts, aka Joshua Stearns, and joining me is the equally delightful Robin. Don't have a cow, coward.
Hey yo, hey Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm a little tired. The edible is definitely kicked in, but I am enjoying a nice lazy Saturday and having some fun doing creative stuff with you, buddy. How are you today?
Are you on the marijuana?
Maybe.
I'm doing fantastic. It's nice fall weather here in Atlanta. I'm loving that, and I love this season, this time of year. Stayed up all night with one of my best friends watching scary movies last night, like cheesy scary movies.
Sure.
Watched
Yeah.
The Craft, and we watched one called Waxworks.
Nice.
Then fell asleep watching Maximum Overdrive. Lovely, lovely night. Do you have a favorite horror movie, or maybe a comedy one?
I was never like into the slashers growing up.
Yeah.
If I was doing any kind of horror, it was usually zombies, vampires, werewolves type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like that's kind of more sci-fi fantasy, depending on the story that we are telling. And so I recently have been going through the classics. So a couple years ago, I went through all the Nightmare on Elm Streets. And then last year, I did all the Friday the 13th that I could find.
Hell
and
yeah.
This year, it's Halloween. So I've
very
seen
nice.
Halloween 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, the Rob Zombie 1 and 2, H2O 1 and 2, and then I'm going to go for the H4O, which is 3 more movies. I'm skipping Halloween 3 because it doesn't have Mike Myers in it, and it's just a witch tale.
Interesting.
So it's kind of fun because my buddy Josh, no relation, is also watching these movies because he's like, I haven't seen him too. And so we have our movie nights on Fridays, and we watch the second one with Busta Rhymes in the H2O series. That one's really cool because he kicks the shit out of Michael at the end, and he's all like into kung fu, watching like Bruce Lee movies and stuff like that.
Hell yeah.
So, and I love me some Busta Rhymes, man. So it was
me
very,
too.
very, very cheesy. I never really understood the point of these horror movies growing up. I was more of an action guy, a comedy dude.
Sure.
But then I figured out that it's kind of cheesy fun. It's not really supposed to scare you. It's just, it's just kind of gory, a little bit sometimes. And there's nudity. There's like tons of nudity. So
tons of boobies, loads of boobies.
Yeah.
I agree. Like younger, I didn't really watch them, but my favorite ones still are like the cheesy 80s ones. Like the Phantasm really sums up what I like. Movies like two brothers save the world from alien like zombie beings or whatever they are. So
yeah, like some people consider the movie Alien and Aliens like to be horror, but I think they're like sci-fi.
See, I think Alien is more of definitely sci-fi, but a sci-fi psychological horror thriller.
Yes, absolutely.
Where Aliens is much more of a sci-fi action movie in my eyes.
Correct. Yeah. I totally agree. But hey, this is not a movie Halloween podcast, even though it looks like we could be actually talking about this right now instead.
Here's the thought. We've got a couple in the pipeline, I guess.
Yeah. And if this is your first episode, here's how it works. One of us will pick an episode of The Simpsons to discuss. We go through the plot, provide questionable impressions, and point out our favorite bits. This week, I picked Treehouse of Horror 5 from Season 6, Episode 6. We were so close to getting a 666 with the numbers there, but it's the 5th Treehouse of Horror. It was directed by Jim Reardon. And because there are 3 stories, they have actually have 4 writers. So it was written by Bob Cushell for The Shining. Greg Daniels and Dan McGrath did Time and Punishment. And then making his premiere as a Simpsons writer is David X. Cohen with his Nightmare Cafeteria. And this first air date was 10/30/1994. So
one of the gags, Josh, speaking of the writers, they always do in the opening credits is they do the names.
Yes.
And they do little gag names for them. So the writers were Count Greg Daniela, Dearly Departed Dan McGrath, David Cohen's Severed Hand, and Bob Cushell. which I just like. It's like jaundiced Jim Reardon is the director. Like I
Yeah.
don't know why I love that so much. It's so it's so I don't know arbitrary what they pick. It's so random. I just think it's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, it's really funny how they do the funny names. I was trying to look in my notes here. I know I have more of them written down. Oh, here
Yeah,
we
they
go.
had like
Uh,
Sam Sayonara Simon. Like
right, and they had
it's not even horror. It's just
James Hellbrooks and Matt Grave Robin Graining.
I can't remember who it was. They have one that's just like bad, James Jones. It's just like
Yeah.
bad.
Think about it. How
Macabre
many of
Marsha
these that they
Wallace.
have to do? So let's do a little bit of history of the Treehouse of Horror. This started in season 2 of The Simpsons, and it kind of took off. And now it's actually, in my opinion, I didn't look it up to back this up, but I think it's the most watched episode of any given year, because I know people like our buddy Delvin, who was our guest on here, says like, oh, I'll still catch the Halloween ones every once in a while, and I've heard that from other people as well. So it's very fun because these 3 stories aren't really tied to your normal reality, and the writers and animators can just go gangbusters and have a lot of fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have certain tropes that they were doing for a long time. So for example, they had the funny gravestones everywhere, but they got so tired of making all those gravestone jokes that for this one they just have one that says amusing gravestone, kind of like indicating that, hey, we're kind of over this shit. And
They're
he
just
told me,
over because it's hard. They were like, we're spending, hours and hours coming up with these things. Like it's easy, you think, but it's not. It reminded me of, the Bart jokes, like Joe's taxidermy,
yeah,
like we were
right.
talking about coming up with our own. They were like, we couldn't do it. We couldn't get a third good one. It takes too long for the writers. They
Yeah,
were
I mean,
tired of
like
it.
I could just imagine me being like Joshua
Give me a
Spooky Stearns,
break.
like that, and then like that's good enough. I'm good.
Yep.
Uh, Robin Zombie Cohort. We're good. We're done.
Exactly.
We're moving on.
Phenomenal. That's great. That's enough. That's easy to do. But the
Right.
tombstones, you have to come up with something clever. It's like, what?
Yeah. So, and also I want to bring up that this particular episode is possibly the most gory and gruesome of the bunch, because David Merkin, who was the showrunner at the time, was really kind of upset with the Joseph Lieberman types in the world who were complaining that there
Mm-hmm.
was too much violence in our society and popular culture
Mm-hmm.
and entertainment. And so he
Trying to
was like,
censor a lot of television
yeah.
and
So it was
movies.
like big middle finger to all of that. I'm going to make this thing crazy violent, and it's going to be very disturbing.
The way he talks about it in the commentary, Josh, he's like savoring it. He's like relishing,
Yeah.
that feeling again when he's talking about it. It's great.
It's almost like a
Clearly,
rebel
very,
without
very
a
excited about
cause.
it. Yeah,
He's
yeah,
just so excited to be like a rebel, like,
yeah.
I'm going to go
Exactly.
against the authority. Like, this is my
He
way.
was so excited
Sticking
talking
it to
about
the
it. I love
man,
it. Sticking it to Congress. Eat this.
Yeah. Say this is my favorite Treehouse of Horror ever. This is
Oh
why I
yeah,
wanted to do it first out the gate.
yeah.
And
Me too.
we get 3 stories. We get The Shinning, Time and Punishment, and Nightmare Cafeteria. And
Do
I
you mean
think
The
out of
Shining?
do you don't want to get sued? And I think out of the 3 of them, it's almost in that same order for my favoritism. Like I like The Shining the most. Time and Punishment is right next there, and then taking the shameful bronze position is Nightmare Cafeteria.
So what's funny is I like the Shinin and the Nightmare Cafeteria equally, and
Yeah.
I think that the time travel one is a little bit
Oh,
subpar
interesting.
there.
There
Yeah,
you go. Cool.
yeah.
And
We
also,
differ on things.
traditions that we have on the Treehouse of Horror is Marge warning the audience that it's going to be a extra gory episode, and those with weak stomachs or little children may not want to watch it. It's the same warning that she's been doing since the very first one, and it's kind of funny because no one ever listens to her. And she says that the censors recommend watching instead the 1947 Glenn Ford movie classic 200 Miles to Oregon.
Because in live action,
Yeah,
like
like stock
Wagon
footage.
Train in
Yeah,
black and white,
yeah, and
which is it's an actual scene from a movie. The reference I read online was it might be from the old Glenn Ford 310 to Yuma. That might be a
oh, okay.
scene that they showed, but they weren't sure.
I just thought the name reminded
It's
me
random too.
of Oregon Trail. I mean, you and I are of the age where we played Oregon
Uh-huh.
Trail and died of
Uh-huh.
dysentery, like when we were
Got
in school.
dysentery.
So I just got that was the vibes that I was getting from it. And
Yeah.
then we get to a creepish Bart, and he has like the whole you don't actually see Bart, you just see a sound wave. So his voice is like moving up and down.
So it's a take on the show The Outer Limits. Did you ever watch any of those
No, I never watched
episodes?
any of that.
Phenomenal sci-fi show with a horror bent that would tell a different story, completely different story, sort of like The Twilight Zone.
Oh,
But it
okay.
was in the
Yeah.
late 80s and the early 90s, and they would start with this flat line going, "Do not adjust your television set." And you see the modulation there.
Now that what you just said sounds familiar, but I couldn't tell you one single episode of that show. Like that you know, do not adjust your set. I think I've heard it parodied so much that it's just kind of like, oh yeah, that thing.
I could not tell you a plot from any given one
Okay.
off the top of my head either. But I figure if I watched some, it would come back to me. I'd be like, oh yeah,
Yeah, and
it's a
I
good
like
show.
how
It was a good show.
Homer cuts in. He was like, "What's that, boy? We're in control. Hey, look, I can see my voice. This is my voice on
Blah,
TV."
blah, blah, blah.
And Bart's like, "Dad, you're ruining the atmosphere." It's pretty funny. And then, as we mentioned before, then we get the opening scene, and we get a bunch of tombstones with the amusing tombstone.
In the graveyard.
The only one having the spooky fun.
They opened on the graveyard. I think for these first 5
Yeah.
Treehouse of Horrors, they said that this was the last time they opened on a graveyard. After that, I just thought that was interesting until like the 29th season or something like that.
Yeah, and then they're like, "Oh, we finally found some more jokes, so we're bringing it back."
It takes time, like I said, it takes 30 years.
And because it is a Halloween special, we get a special intro as the credits are going. We see Mo is hanging, but his eyes are open. Patty and Selma are being burned as witches. And it's pretty funny because they use the flames of the fire to light their cigarettes. We see Bart using a guillotine to decapitate certain school officials. And I think Wiggle was in there too.
Yeah.
Which is a little interesting because it's almost like the flip of the coin for the final story that they have, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's really interesting because like that in particular of those 3 vignettes, it is not. He like jumps on the other severed heads.
Oh yeah,
Like smush him down in the basket. Like it's pretty like graphic. And then Skinner he sees that there's room in the basket now, and he gives him the thumb up, and then the guillotines his head off, and it's not subtle.
I forgot that Skinner gave him the thumbs up. That's pretty good. All right, so the first one we got is the Shinning, and my God, I love this episode. It's so funny. I have only seen The Shining once, and I saw it a couple years ago when I was like getting more into horror movies and watching Kubrick stuff.
Yeah,
and I know this episode so well that it was just like, oh, that's where that's from. Oh, that's where that's from. Oh, that's what that's from. And it was not very scary, and I thought it was kind of just weird and kind of funny. It
is weird. I mean, there's a lot going on with the making of that movie and how people feel about that movie. But definitely a classic, objectively,
right?
Or and then our feelings subjectively. Yeah, it's not something that I watch. You know, they did make a sequel in the last 5 years called Dr. Sleep with Ewan McGregor. And it was pretty good. It held up. Okay. I thought it was going to be terrible, but it actually held up. Dr. Sleep is the sequel.
We basically start with this classic Tuesday, right? And they're driving up in the mountains, going to the mansion that they're going to be watching over the winter break, I guess. And we get a couple of fun bits where Marge is like, Homer, did you remember to lock the front door?
Did you remember to lock the front door? And he's like, don't. And then he's like, doom, Wednesday.
And it's like, right in the Homer, did you remember did you leave the back door unlocked? Don't.
Boom, Thursday.
Lisa pipes up, we left Grandpa back at the gas station.
Silence.
No one cares. Even Marge is just like, whatever.
Are we going to go get Grandpa? Nothing. Not an even answer. Just completely ignore.
Yeah, and of course this house is owned by Mr. Burns, and he has his faithful, sidekick Smithers. And he mentions that this property was built on ancient burial grounds, satanic rituals, witch burnings, and 5 John Denver Christmas specials.
So you told me you don't know who John Denver is?
I have no idea who John Denver is.
John Denver was a very folksy, like Americana musician. He did like Country Road, Take Me Home.
Oh, I know that
So he's
song.
The most unoffensive person. And he's like, it's the site of satanic rituals, witch burnings, and 5 John Denver Christmas specials. And Homer's like,
yeah, I just knew it was funny. I didn't know why it was funny. I like how so they're getting a tour with Burns, showing them around, and then they go up to it, and the elevator comes out, all the blood gets off, just like in the movie, and then Mr. Burns goes, that's odd. Usually the blood gets off at the second floor, and
It's hilarious.
only Lisa seems really freaked out in the animation of it. Like everyone else is kind of like, well, that's not quite right, but Lisa
It's
is
very
like
ho-hum.
horrified.
I agree.
Yeah, she is like, what the hell? Maybe it's because she's shorter and she could have almost drowned in the blood if it was like, a little bit higher.
Yeah, there
And
you
oddly
go.
enough, Bart is missing, but we cut to find him cutting through the hedge maze with a chainsaw. And he basically is like, I found an easy way to go through the maze, And then, of course, Willie's just like, this guy. But he's like, you know what?
Because
And he
those
thinks in
hedge
his head,
mazes.
don't just be nice to the kid. His dad's going to go nuts. Yeah. And then we find out that Bart can read Willie's mind. And he's like, oh, boy, you get the shinning. Don't you mean shining? Shut up. You want to get sued?
Do you want to get sued? I said, this is one of the greatest lines of this.
It's like top 10.
He's like, you've got the shinin. He's like, don't you mean the shining? He's like, shut it. Do you want to get sued? That's one of those lines that really carried through over the years. Like that
top
one.
Top 10
the
Willie
shinin.
lines. Top 10.
Oh, yeah. The shinin.
So I like also how Willie goes, it's like, if your dad goes nuts and you need help, use your shinning and call me. But do not read my mind between 4 and 5. That's Willie's time.
That's Willie's time. That's funny. I love that.
And then we cut to Burns and Smithers, and Smithers is cutting the cable line, and we see beer being loaded into the car. And we got Smithers going, sir, did you ever stop to think that maybe it was doing this caused the previous caretakers to go insane and murder their families?
Burns goes, maybe. Tell you what, if we come back and they're all butchered, I owe you a Coke.
And he does like a little... It's kind of fun. So we got Homer on the couch, and he slowly but calmly realizes that the TV is out and there's no beer. And so
Bart's like, oh, you seem to be taking it well.
Yeah, and then he goes, maybe I'll check out that axe collection. And then we say, Mom, will Dad kill us? Well, we'll just have to wait and see.
We'll just have to wait and see, Lisa.
Yeah, I thought that was really funny because she's like, we can't do anything to prevent us getting murdered. We're just gonna have to wait and see. So we get another direct scene from the Shining, and Mo plays the ghost, who is basically telling him
the bartender
if Homer kills his family, he'll give him a ghost beer or something. I don't know. It's not really clear.
He goes. They'll be happier as ghosts. And I was like, you don't look happy. He's like, oh, I'm happy. La 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 la. Now go with your family.
And also made me think that Homer went sober for the Movementarium cult and the insane asylum. So I think he could have lasted a little bit longer with the no beer, but
that would really screw up the premise of the whole bit.
And now we get what I think is the most classic part of this entire Halloween special.
Oh, yeah.
Marge, much like in the movie, Marge discovers a typewriter and mentions that it can be a window into the madness of Homer.
She says, what he's typed will be a window into his psyche.
Yeah, and the typewriter just reads, feeling fine.
Feeling fine. Everything's good. She's like, oh, okay, everything's fine.
Then we get a
and
crack
then the
of
lightning flash, yes.
Yep. And we get a lovely, almost full 360 spin. And we see all over on the walls, it says like no TV and no beer, make Homer go crazy.
It's brilliant animation. Like it's creepy. It's like all over the walls.
Yeah.
And different styles, different like sizes and everything. It's really creepy. It's great animation.
And then Marge goes, this is less encouraging. So Homer walks up. He's like, what do you think, Marge? All I need is a title. I was thinking along the lines of no TV and no beer make Homer something.
Go crazy?
Don't mind if I do.
I love that bit. How Homer goes like nutso in this. He does it. Marge goes and breaks the glass. What did the thing say? Break glass.
Oh yeah. So there's a great visual gag because there's a baseball bat behind some glass and it says break glass in case of spousal insanity.
So then she's holding the bat and Homer in that same kind of style starts going, give me the bat, Ma. Give me the bat. Give me the bat. Give me the bat. Give me the bat. Give me the bat.
And then he looks in the mirror and scares himself, falls down the stairs, and gets knocked out. And then in a huge feat of strength, like Marge just deadlifts this guy, like
Yeah.
puts him over the
Slings him
shoulder,
over the shoulder. Yeah.
and then like
Stack
locks
potatoes.
him into the food freezer, the food locker, I guess. Is that a food locker? Is that what that would be
Yeah.
called?
It's a
Food.
walk-in freezer. Yeah.
Yeah. I also like how like she like you'll stay in here until you're no longer insane. Chili sounds good tonight.
She's like, oh, look, I'll grab some dinner.
It's just those like little things that Marge
It's one of
does,
those little
you
things.
know, like, and
Exactly.
it's just very, very
Exactly.
funny because it's like just a very common, like,
Incongruous. It's
right.
incongruous. It's out of place and it's hilarious because
You
of
know,
that.
if you're the person cooking for your family, like, and you walk by and you're like, yeah, that'll work. Yeah, that
It's
can
like
feed a bunch of
ho
people.
hum every
Yeah.
day. Homer's locked in the freezer because he's got insane. He's gonna murder us, and we're
Yeah.
gonna have chili for dinner.
So then we get classic animation of Homer sitting down with multiple open containers around him, and he's just like, yop, yop, yop,
Just
yop,
chowing
yop,
down,
yop, yop,
eating
yop,
the
yop.
whole freaking walk-in freezer down.
Yep, and we get Mo the Ghost going like, "Hey Homer, me and the ghouls here, I think you're not really focusing on the murder part."
He says, we're concerned the project isn't moving forward.
There you go. He said, "Can't murder now, eating." And I love how they open up the door and it's Mo the Ghost with like Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Pinhead, classic Universal
Dracula,
monsters like Dracula.
Wolfman,
Yeah,
Mummy.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so there is a fun deleted scene that there's only one fun deleted scene on the DVD. I have to stress that there are multiple deleted scenes for this episode, but only one is actually really good. And it's Bart skating through the house that they're in. That's very similar to when the little child was riding his tricycle around and he sees the two twins. And so like as he's like skating around, we see doors open and it's the same monsters that were taking Homer out of the food locker. So we get like, you know, the Jason Voorhees and Freddy like poke out, and then they're all out there with the door open looking at Bart. He turns around, they all close the door really quick, and you see Sherry and Terry, who's playing the twins, basically going, "Your daddy's gonna kill you."
The twins.
And then he turns to the right, and it's Selma and Patty. And he's like, "Yeah, the kids are right. You're going to be buttered, you know."
He's right, you know.
Yeah, it was just a very funny bit, and I wish they almost had like a little bit more time in the episode to fit it in, because it does like really fit well with the parody of the movie that they're basing all of this stuff on.
Yeah, it was great. I like so we now get kind of the montage as he's out of the freezer of him like going around, and it's like in The Shining where Jack has the axe and he's going to try and knock the room is locked. He's gonna knock down the door with the axe. He said that Homer does it like he like cuts a hole in one door and he's like, "Here's Johnny," and there's nobody in there. And then he's like, does the next one. He's like, "David Letterman."
"Hi, David. I'm Grandpa."
He's like, "Don't." And he goes to the next one. He's like, "I'm Mike Wallace. I'm Morley Safer, and I'm Ed Bradley, and this is Andy Bruning tonight on 60 Minutes."
Yeah, and so that
I don't know why I find that gag so funny.
It is really funny because he's holding the little like watch too that they have in 60 Minutes. So you hear the ticking. So then he finally finds the right family right behind the right door, and they start the chases on. Marge ends up getting over to a ham radio, and goes to Wiggum, and he's like, "Help, help, my husband's on a murderous rampage. Over."
Who goes, "Oh, thank God it's over." He turns off the set.
Yeah, he's like, "I was worried for a second." Like, that was hilarious. So Bart uses his shinning for the first time in the episode. So we got Willie going, "Uh-oh, the little fat boy and his family are in trouble. I'm going to risk the lot of you." And Willie goes into action, throws a portable TV that he was watching into the snow outside. And this is the first of later. 3 Willie in the Willie with an axe to the back. Because Homer immediately comes around the curtain.
Yeah, he busts. He lives in the house. He's busted in. And he's like, "All right, you loony."
Yeah, and so right, axe to the back,
axe to the spine. It's like upper spine. It's brutal.
And you liked Marge's comment after that, right?
Because he's falling down. He's like bloody and dead on the floor. She's like, "Oh, I hope the rug is Scotch guarded."
Yeah. So just like in the film, the family starts to run away and they go into the snow, and it all looks like it's going to be over, and Homer's going to murder them. But Lisa finds the portable TV.
The portable
turns
TV
around and
in
is like,
the snow.
"Look, Dad, TV. And Homer
He's
has
like,
this great line where he's like all the murderous intent goes away, and he goes, television, teacher, mother, secret lover.
he's
And they all
he's
gather around the
holding it so adoringly,
and
talking
they
to,
all
oh
gather
god,
around to be glow the warmth of a
come
television.
family,
And he has the whole like urging to kill, lowering, lowering,
fading,
gone.
rising, fading, gone.
Yeah, and then they're all frozen, just like
It's
Jack
a hard
Nicholson's
cut,
character. Yeah,
the exact hard cut from The Shining, where it cuts to them completely frozen, just like Jack Nicholson was, with like the icicles on their face and everything.
yeah. And then a chorus song comes on. One
Because
singular
so they're
sensation.
all frozen and they're holding the TV, and the next show was the Tony Awards.
Yeah.
And they're like, change it. It's like a kid, I'm frozen. And he's like, one, there's a chorus line of people.
And you hear Homer go, urging to kill, rising.
Oh,
Also, that song is a little bit, I guess it's foreshadowing. I hope I'm using that word correct, because it will come back towards the end of the episode.
Hawk, do you need to know what's going to happen in the future? What's in store for your love life? When will you get a fortune so you can buy more manure for the farm? Call me up at 1-900-THE-SHINNIN.
Like, I want to totally know how I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to call the Shining Hotline.
It's the Shinnin. Do you want us to get sued?
When am I gonna get the big promotion at work? I'm calling the Shining.
Ach, you dog-tongued dirt muncher. It's the Shinnin.
I'm going to call the Shining Hotline to find out why I just can't seem to hit it off with the ladies.
Damn it, you daft pansy. I'll put a curse on your wee nethers. It's Shinnin. The 1-900-THE-SHINNIN.
The Shining helped me.
No! Stop recording. It's done.
So our second story is Time and Punishment, which I believe is a Ray Bradbury.
It is, yes. A Ray Bradbury called The Time Machine.
Okay, The Time Machine?
Yeah.
Because it says here a sound of thunder, but I don't know.
Well, Josh, if you're going to look it up and call me out, then maybe I'm wrong, but maybe you're just a jerk.
I could be. I don't know. I like Ray Bradbury. Did you ever read any of his
books?
I
did. I had a book of his short stories. I loved those stories, yeah.
He's kind of like him, and like Philip K. Dick are really nice. And I don't read too much fiction, but I got a soft spot for those two.
I love fiction. I have not read Philip K. Dick. I'm in a Ursula K. Le Guin phase right now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these sci-fi shows and movies that we had in the 80s and 90s were based off of these like novels, you know?
Mm-hmm. Shirley Jackson's The Lottery.
Yeah. All right, so we start with a very fun bit where the families all gather around the breakfast table, and all of a sudden we hear, Dad, your hand's stuck in the toaster.
It was just like, just slamming the toaster around trying to get it off, and he finally flings it off. And Mark goes, this is reminiscent to me of like the kid in Poltergeist. So he goes, Dad, it's in there again.
Yeah, and I love how before it's in his hand again, like he gets it stuck again, he like slides down the fridge on his back, right? And he's so like relaxed and relieved, and it's just like boom, cuts into it.
Dad, it's in there again. He picks up his hand, he looks at it, he's like, ah! It's great animation. I love that.
And so Homer is going to go down to the basement and try to repair the toaster, and he accidentally creates a time machine. So you
naturally,
know, like it just happens, you know.
Yeah.
Also, I love how like 50s-esque the time machine looked, because there was like a lot
like
of
bulbs.
big bulbs and like those like glass tubes or whatever, right? That you would have the old computers and whatnot. If you're a fan of the Fallout series, it has some very Fallout vibes to it.
Oh yeah.
So we got Homer, and he's kind of falling into this like void of like clocks to symbolize that he's going through time.
Right.
And you liked how we had the the two people from Rocky and Bullwinkle, right?
Yeah, so it was like Mr. Peabody and Sherman from Rocky Bullwinkle, which
Yeah.
is like that's a random. It's so random,
Yeah,
and they're there.
and Homer said, "Look, what's that? I'm the first non-Brazilian person to travel backwards through time." And then these two show up.
It's so random, and we
Yeah.
were both talking about this beforehand. Is that line? I'm the first non-Brazilian to go back in time, and I was like, "What the hell is that a reference to?" And we
It's
watched the commentary, and they're like, "It really wasn't a reference to anything.
right.
We
And
kind of
Matt
just stuck it
Groening
in there."
was really upset because the original line was non-fictional person to travel through
Yep,
time. And he
yep.
was really in a tizzy about it on the commentary. It was quite fun to hear him. And he's just like, I don't know. I think it's a stupid line. We should have kept the one I got. Yeah, I was like, damn, Matt. Okay. Some wounds run deep, huh? Jeez. um,
Mm.
so Homer goes back to the Dino era, and he has some great lines here. He talks about like, "Oh my God, I went back in time before dinosaurs were in zoos." He also says, "Don't panic. Remember the advice your father gave you on your wedding day." And you get Grandpa. He goes, "If you're ever traveling back in time, don't step on anything, because even the tiniest change can alter the future in ways you can't imagine." And of course, the first thing he does is go, "You bug, go smush now," and he kills a bug.
I love it. He goes, "Yeah, you bug goes squished out. It is just it's a mosquito." And he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's just one mosquito. That can't change anything, right?"
Yep. And
And
this
there's a giant sloth walking by when he
yeah.
goes, "Right?" And the giant sloth looks at him and goes, "Oh." I love that bit. I don't know
And
why.
one thing that was also consistent through the commentary is the praising of the animators and the
Oh
artists for
yeah.
that, because this took a lot of work to do.
Yep.
They're not able to reuse backgrounds. They're going off into wide, different areas like the dinosaur era,
Creating whole
or
worlds.
having
Yeah.
to replicate that mansion for the Shining episode.
Yep.
So yeah, hats off to them. So Homer comes back, and the way this all works is if you put a toaster, you put the bread in the toaster, you hit the button, right, and then you go back in time, and then you come back to the future
When it
once
pops.
once it pops.
Yeah.
So the first time he comes back, we have basically what I call the Flanders Slave Society.
Yep.
And we find out that for whatever reason, Ned Flanders is the unquestionable ruler of everything.
We find out when the floor like morphs. Homer's like, "What the hell is going on?" And the floor morphs like the scene in Terminator 2.
Yes, it's definitely
Yeah,
an
yeah.
homage to that.
Yep.
When the sheriff is getting the coffee cup in the T-1000,
Mm-hmm.
goes up and gets them. Also, fun fact about that: those were twins, and those twins
Oh
are
yeah.
also in that Robin Williams movie, Good Morning Vietnam.
Oh no, kidding. Oh
Yeah.
yes, I remember that.
Yeah,
I
so it's so
loved
weird
that movie,
because
by the
I
way, when it
saw
came out.
Terminator 2, and I didn't really make the connection until many, many years later when I was watching Good Morning Vietnam again. I was like, oh, wait, they're twins. Oh, that makes sense for the special effects. Like, you just get twins to show duplicates and blah, 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 blah. Anyway.
Good Morning Vietnam. Both of those are phenomenal movies. Very different, but phenomenal movies.
Good Morning Vietnam!
One of Robin Williams' best roles.
Yeah, and they just filmed
ever.
him, and like they just cut, like, well, just go nuts, and we'll find something useful for the movie. Like,
He was amazing.
Yep. So we get Ned Flanders showing up on the TV, and he's like, "All right, prepare for a re-nedification," which is fun.
It's Josh. It's re-education, like education, like re-education.
Okay,
Re-education.
All right, I kept screwing that. I'm done. I screwed that up 4 times already today. I'm giving up. I'm giving up.
Re-education.
Yeah. Not saying the words. Not going to say the words. So it's basically like a dystopian brainwashing program. And the first thing they do is giant smiles. And these smiles look really creepy.
They get these metal hooks coming and hook into the corners of the mouth. Just like the animation is gruesome.
And all the men are dressed like Flanders, Ned Flanders, and all the women are dressed like Maude, I believe.
I love the line. He goes, hilarious. Just relax and let the hooks do their work.
Yeah, then Homer is like, "What are you smiling at?"
He turns the rando next door and he's like, "What the hell are you smiling at?" I thought it was hilarious.
It was very funny.
Yeah.
And if the smiles weren't enough, what you end up doing is getting a lobotomy. And they have Mo go like, "Hey, Homer, it's not so bad. They're going through the nose, and they let you keep the little piece of your brain they cut out." Which is great. And then Marge and the kids all have lobotomies too. And Marge's line is great. She's like, "It's bliss.
It's bliss." And she's like drooling out her mouth. It's awful. I love when the Mo bit where he's talking. He's like talking to his brain. He's
Yeah.
like, "Who is that? Who is that? Is that Homer? Who is that?"
So Homer makes a run for it, and Ned releases the hounds. And there's a fun joke where Homer is like, "These wieners will give me the quick energy that I need to escape."
Whips out like a string
Links,
of
yeah,
link of wieners. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and then he just gobbles them in.
Instead of throwing them to the dogs, he's like,
Right.
"I'll eat them." It's very Homer.
So he manages to get back, and he hits the toaster again. So now he's back in the prehistoric times, and he tries to outrun a T-Rex with minimal environmental impact. And there's really well animated. He's jumping,
Yeah,
he's diving, like he's not hitting
yeah,
anything. And
very
then
definitely.
he finally
Yes,
gets away from the T-Rex, and he accidentally sits on a fish. And I
the
know you
fish
like
that's
this
just
line.
crawled out of the ocean.
Yeah. Do you like
Yes.
you want to say the line that he does?
He goes, "Oh, I wish I hadn't killed that fish." It's
It's
very
so
Dr.
good.
Seussian, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I don't know why it's so.
So
Why is that so funny though? I just they are so good at this.
yeah, so as we progress with the jokes in this one, we become less and less time, both in the past and in the present. So we go back, and now we have basically Bart and Lisa are giants, and it's
Giants.
Homer is like a playhouse and a little plaything, and
They're
they're
gonna
like,
squish
"Oh,
him
look,
like a bug.
it's Dad! Yeah, let's squish him like a bug." Very kid thing to do, right?
Uh huh.
Um,
It
but
goes back again.
the best one though is the perfect family. He has a swanky house. The kitchen is all done up. It's extra big. It looks very nice. Everyone's dressed to the nines. Maggie has a diamond pacifier.
Diamond pacifier in her mouth.
Yeah,
And Bart's really well behaved. He's like, "Oh, hello, father."
and he hands his dad like the comics, like the Sunday comics,
Uh
for
huh.
the paper. And Lisa pipes up and it says like, "Are we going to be taking the Lexus to Aunt Patty and Selma's funerals?"
You know, that's the second Lexus reference in The Simpsons that we've done because the
Oh,
rental
really?
car.
Oh, yeah, it was also a Lexus. Man,
Yep.
I wonder if Lexus paid for that placement or they just
I'm
like Lexus.
wondering too, or somebody
Yeah.
just liked it. Like Matt Groening is driving Lexus
Maybe
to this
Lexus
day.
is funnier than Beamer or Benz.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so I like it too. So Homer kind of goes through the checklist and he's like, well-behaved kids, money, luxury sedan, dead sister-in-laws. Marge, my dear, would you kindly pass me a donut? What's a donut?
What's a donut?
Ah! And if this
He's
poor man would have just stayed a little bit longer, because it
He's
starts
funny,
raining donuts outside.
Kids, it's raining again, and it's yeah,
And
it's
also,
so it's brutal. So he was this close to having the perfect life, and if he just waited a moment longer,
oh my God,
perfect.
he would probably die of diabetes and like high cholesterol
I
because
thought
he
the
would just
same
like
thing.
go outside and be like, "Rah, blah, 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 blah." Also,
It's a good
all
way
right,
to go, though, Josh. Good way to go.
let's go down this rabbit hole. How would it work if it rained donuts? How would that even work? Like, can you imagine trying to drive
Water.
while donuts are falling from the sky, or
Oh
walk
yeah,
while donuts are falling from the sky?
it's
And like,
easier than
how much donuts
water.
can be caked in like to our shoes and other
Mm,
things?
yeah, yeah.
It's a funny joke, and I was trying to think. I'm like,
Maybe they
how is
melt
this?
into water or
Is that what
something
it
eventually
does?
if you don't eat them the first 10 minutes.
Right? Yeah, yeah. But obviously society was fine because
We
the
can make this
Simpsons were
work,
surviving.
Josh.
And then so now we, like I said before, we're getting quicker and quicker there and back, and we get our
Mm-hmm.
second axe to the back, and this time it's Maggie Simpson
It's like
and takes out her
I could
pacifier and
get
goes,
you home.
"This is indeed a disturbing universe."
He
Voiced by
goes,
the great late great or James
James
Earl
Earl
Jones.
Jones coming out of Maggie's mouth after she's just axed Willie. It's great.
And it's the exact
the
same
writers
animation
loved that
almost.
gag, by the way. The
Yes,
writers
of
were talking
course.
about how
They were
much
very
they
excited about
loved
it.
having Willie come back 3 times. He get
Yeah.
axed 3 times, and
Yeah.
it's great. It's hilarious because it's so brutal each time, and he's like just steps on screen, and he gets murdered right there,
Right.
and it's like bad at this.
And it's the same like drawing of him like hunched over with the axe in the back and the guys going all googly and everything each time. So it's pretty funny. We also get some more jokes. So now we're seeing the house, and the house just keeps fastly changing into
Yeah.
things like the first
Yeah,
McDonald's,
a
or the
shoe.
Flintstone house, a shoe. And we also get one of our other traditions in early Treehouse of Horror episodes. Kodos and Kang are watching from their spaceship, and for like I don't know how many, like the first 7 or 8, of
Yeah.
these Halloween
At least I
specials, they would
wonder.
always
Yeah.
show up because they were
Yeah.
like in the very first one.
Mm-hmm.
So they always play an homage, and they do their classic like silly humans playing with time, or something
Yep.
like that, and they do their dumb laugh.
And they laugh
Uh,
forever. The laugh goes on. They're just like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
and then random again, they magically turn into Sherman and Mr. Peabody heads.
Yeah, that was weird, wasn't it? It was just that was a weird callback.
So they were so nice and cordial in that show, and they had the
Yeah.
running gag with the two of them, where he goes, "What do you think, Mr. Peabody?" And he goes, "Shut up, you." It's just very out of character if you know that character.
It's
and
almost like they're like some kind of like older gay couple, and they're just kind of like the one is just super sick of the other one being nice all the time, right? It's just like, quiet you. I don't know how to tolerate you. Very strange. And then basically, we got to finish this episode somehow. So Homer comes back to the house yet again. And
Everything's pretty much the same now.
correct. And so he goes through the list and he's like, Marge, give me the details. Like, are there donuts? Like, what year is it? Who's our ruler?
What's the color of the sky?
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So basically, she answers all of them in the positive. It sounds pretty good. And then they sit down to eat, and they have like all of a sudden snake tongues, and they're
snake
just eating
tongues,
their foods.
Yeah. Like darting out and grabbing food with their
right
lizard tongues.
And they still had forks and knives and stuff like that, I guess, to like cut it into smaller bits if they have to.
Sure.
But it seemed really weird that if you have a food delivery system built into your body, like a tongue, anyway.
I love Homer's like, close enough.
Right. And that's when we get basically the shift to our next story, and the final one, which in my opinion is the weakest of the entries, Nightmare Cafeteria.
Mom, what's for dinner? Dad, when can we eat?
Like,
Mom, we're starving. Dad, we want food now. No, children, you are food now.
Kids, it's what's for dinner. But this is the most violent of the three. This one gets really dark.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. So it's based on an old show called Nightmare Cafe that didn't run for very long as I know it. But basically, I think it was a similar premise to like Twilight Zone, where it was based out of the same cafe. I might be completely wrong. I might
No,
be
it checks out.
something.
I was trying to get you and tell you the real facts, but you're right this time. So okay. Wikipedia collaborates on everything that you're saying.
Yeah. And then a new vignette happens.
Yeah. So for this one, the basic premise is detention is overflowing. That is like one of the major conflicts we have for this story. And we get this because Bart is being a little miscreant, and he's like, "Hey, everybody, let's turn our desk backwards so when Edna Krabappel comes in, she'll flip her lid, right?"
And he's of course, the only one that does it.
The only one. Everyone ditches him. He's like, "Yeah, whatever, Bart." And so we go to the cafeteria because the detention hall is already like full, and they have this great drawing of like all these kids pressed up against the glass.
And one of them detention glass.
Yeah, and one of them is like,
I can't breathe.
Out of oxygen. Well, that's what you get for making a paper airplane. And Harry Shearer, I want to bet, I don't know this for sure, but in my heart of hearts, I think he had a lot of fun with this story.
I think it might have been one of his very favorite episodes he ever did, because he gets to be super evil in this.
Yeah.
And he just clearly relishes it. He does such an amazing job with the acting in this.
Right.
And he's just evil as shit. That's lovely.
He delivers the lines very well. It's fantastic. Basically, because the detention hall is full, they got to go to the cafeteria.
We have another conflict, which is they cut the budget for the meat.
Yeah.
So they can only get grade F meat.
Right. And if you read the box, it says mostly circus animals, some filler.
Oh God, that is so disgusting.
Yeah, and so basically, Lunch Lady Doris and Skinner are kind of like a tag team in this episode, and they're both
Yeah,
complaining about the issues that they're having with the school.
yeah,
And Jimbo trips Lunch Lady Doris when he had a giant pot of like some kind of
yeah, like
marinade or
gruel or
liquid or
something. Yeah,
something. And
it gets all over him.
yeah, and it's very funny because Skinner, for whatever reason, like licks like he like wipes
Yeah,
the
he
finger.
grabs him and he licks his finger and he tastes it and he's like,
Mm.
oh.
Yeah, and
It's so good. It's so creepy.
yeah, and so then Doris is totally in on this because she needs to solve the meat problem, right?
Yep.
And we cut to Jimbo, and he's like, "It's hard for me to keep cleaning this giant pot when you keep spilling meat tenderizer on me." And then you
You
hear
hear
a
like
lid close,
it's like, it's
right?
hard for me to work in the dark.
Yeah, exactly,
He's
exactly.
clearly being cooked.
And in the next scene, we see everybody eating sloppy Jimbos. And Edna is like, "Hey, Skinner, what's up with the good grub?"
She says, this tastes so young and impudent. He's like, would you say you remember Jimbo? She's like, do you mean you chopped him up and put him into a sandwich? And he like touches his nose
Yeah.
like on the nose. And they're like, oh.
So it's amazing how all the teachers are just like so into cannibalism because it tastes good,
Oh.
right?
Oh yeah. I mean, consider the circus meat and how bad that was.
And you have to eat that at the school cafeteria. You can't eat anywhere else.
So I like the next bit with Uter. So
Yeah.
Uter's the fat German kid, right?
Yes.
And he comes up and he's like, these Jimbo sandwiches are very good, aren't they? Skinner's like, you cut in line. You're going to be so fat and juicy. And he's like, come with me. And they cut to the next scene where it's like,
Oktoberfest.
yeah, it's Oktoberfest, and they made him into sausages, and
Yeah.
the link callback apparently. And Principal Skinner comes at the table and they're eating, and he's like, "Oh, relax, kids. I've got a gut feeling Uter's around here somewhere. After all, isn't there a little Uter in all of us? In fact, you might say that I chopped up Uter and killed him and made him into sausages." Oh wait, scratch that last one.
Yeah, Skinner loves the bad puns and jokes, and he keeps cracking himself up throughout the episode. Throughout the episode, he's having fun.
Yes. It's just
So
the evil. It's almost like the butcher of Baker Street. It's great.
Right. I also find it hilarious that the kids go home and they try to get mom's help, and Marge is just like, "Hey, look, kids, you got to fend for yourself. I can't hold your hand every day."
Yeah, she's like, you got to walk in there and you just look right in the eye and you say, "Don't eat me."
Right.
It's hilarious.
It was very funny.
So you heard that Homer was supposed to be in that
right
scene,
but they cut it.
And they cut it out. But the writer Cohen gave a soliloquy of what the line was going to be,
right? Yes.
Which I thought was very impressive of him to remember after all this time. But it's funny. I'm glad they cut it out.
Yeah, he said something along the lines of like, "Well, Dad, like what you wouldn't eat a person, right? There's certain boundaries." And he's like, "Well,
He's like,
I would
because
never
of
eat
the
somebody,
laws."
but if you think about it, I mean, there is some possibilities." And did I write a cookbook that has 50 ways to cook Millhouse?
Yes, I did.
do.
But
And
am I going
the
to use it?
whole part,
Not unless they change the law.
yeah, exactly.
Because I respect the law.
Yeah, he goes very smart philosophy Homer.
Yeah,
From the sound of it,
completely moralless.
Yeah, and I'm glad they cut it.
Yeah,
it's fine.
It was funny to know about. I'm glad I know about it. It wouldn't have worked as well.
Correct. Yeah,
Marge's
totally
line
agree.
there is rather perfect.
And it just moves the plot along. It doesn't drag things out. We don't get like this monologue from Homer and stuff like that. So,
yep.
But the joke did survive because Edna is reading a book basically that says how to cook Millhouse.
So the scene is there's just 4 kids left.
Yeah.
Millhouse, Lisa, Bart, and what's his name? Milton
or Huey.
He's like the very pale, sickly kid.
Yeah, the one who like pukes on the bus.
Yeah. And they're sitting way in the back, like around each other, and a giant fat Edna Krabappel.
Yes, she's like burping as she's telling them. She's like, "Okay, students, now we're gonna." Oh, excuse me. I also like how now I think the kid's name is Wilton, but anyway, I think it's Milton. The little albino boy was also the one who was made an example of in Camp Krusty because he coughed And then
Yep.
Jimbo was
He's
like,
kind of
"Hey,
sickly.
yeah." So
So
once again, he drops his pencil, and Edna's like licking her lips. She's like,
yeah, she's
"Detention."
licking her chops. She's
Yeah,
excited. She's like, detention. I love the way they shot that scene where like Uter basically knows not Uter. Milton knows that he's dead now. Like
yeah.
he's going to detention, he's probably gonna die. He looks at the other kids for support. And there's just this great animation of them like looking down, looking away, so I have to look him in the eye. And then he walks alone out of the room, and there's this great wide shot there that I love a lot.
So we are all wrong.
Oh dear.
This kid's name is Wendell Borton.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I had to look it up because I knew we
Wendell.
were. I knew
Mr.
both of us were wrong.
Wendell, yeah.
So
Oh.
yeah, it's pretty funny. So Millhouse, Bart, and Lisa trying to make a break for it, and then we see kids in cages, and it's very like
They're
sad.
crawling through I love the kids in cages.
Yeah.
It's
So, like, doesn't one of them have like the cup
hilarious.
that's going against like the bars or whatever?
One's got a fucking harmonica in there.
Yeah. And then we also see that there's free range children because they got
he
kids
goes,
outside.
let me check on the free range children.
Yeah.
There's like a pen outside with children just like running around in it.
Yeah, like
It's
they were
fucking
cattle or
hilarious.
something like that. It's hilarious.
Let's check on the free range children.
So you got Skinner and Doris start chasing the three kids down the hall.
How can you not love this fucking fucking vignette, man?
It's really funny.
Free range children.
So Skinner and Doris are like Doris pops out of the kitchen like blood everywhere, and she has like an egg beater or whatever, right? And she's
with
like
blood covered in blood.
She's like spinning it menacingly. Like I don't know how much damage it would really do, but it scares the shit out of the kids. And then you really like the line that Skinner was telling to Bart, right?
So they're like backing them into like a room with a giant blender, which we'll talk about in a second. And he goes, I'm going to enjoy devouring you, Bart. I think I'll start by, as you so often say, eating your shorts. And it's so evil.
I forget if it's like right after that or right before, but Willie shows up and he goes, and then Skinner has an axe and hits him in the back. So that's our third axe in the back for Willie. And then Willie falls to the ground and he goes, I'm bad at this.
I'm bad at this. Because every time it's like the second he shows up, he's immediately axed out.
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
So we have the kids are being backed up towards a ledge, and below them is a giant. I think it's a Hamilton blender.
It's a Hamilton Beach. Is the company.
Yeah, because I used
Beach.
to work at a Linds and things, so like that brand sounded very, very familiar.
They're terrible blenders, by the way.
Yes, they are. But it's a giant blender, and I have to be honest. Like this part scared me when I was a kid and I first saw it.
Oh yeah, no, it is. They're not pulling any punches here. Right. It is gory and it is so well shot too.
So we see Millhouse fall off the ledge. And then
so you gotta set it up though.
Of the blades of the blender, you see him fall in.
Yeah, right? Like face first into the blender. Like right. It is really, really well animated.
And then
like,
Bart
really
says
well
the line of well,
so I want to set up Millhouse because what he says first is, somebody's going to come save the day, right? This is the Simpsons. Somebody's going to come save us. And then that's when Millhouse falls in. He's like, well, somebody's going to save the Simpsons kids, right?
Yeah, and then both Lisa and Bart fall in, and it's the same animation shot from the POV of the blender blades. And then Bart wakes up, and apparently it was all a nightmare. And then Marge mentions that...
Oh, thank God.
Marge mentions that everything's okay except for the fog that just turns people inside out. And then you see the fog creep through the window, and Homer says something like stupid weather stripping or something like that. Like he's very upset by the cheap windows. And the entire family violently transform inside out. And it's
gory.
Graphic. It's very
graphic. It is graphic. It is nasty.
And they all start to sing the same chorus line that was playing.
One chorus line of people.
And as they're dancing, blood is back. Flying everywhere. You're right. We get Willie coming back. And I love the whole line that goes, the family dog is eyeing Bart's intestine. He's
just, the dog's wandering around, just licking his chops.
And they have really good animation too, where the dog does a back jump. It's it's sniffing around. It's very kind of curious. It's not really sure what it's gonna do.
But it's
and then by the end of it just grabs into Bart and he drags Bart away.
So brutal. First he's biting at him, pulls out intestines by his teeth,
Right.
and then drags Bart off by his intestines.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
it is
it's a lot.
up there. Like that was borderline awful, terrifying. And it just makes the whole thing how they really go down that dark path, because it makes the whole thing more funny.
Well, because Merkin wasn't kidding when he wanted to have the goriest, most disturbing episode out there.
Yeah. And,
All right, well,
it works so freaking well.
Yeah, it does. It does. All right, so here, let's do our final thoughts now. So this is easily my favorite Treehouse of Horror episode, as I said at the top.
Mhm.
The shinning is better than the actual movie. No TV and no beer make Homer something something is an iconic line.
The shinning.
The time travel and the different realities are a lot of fun. The final story is just brutal. And like I said, it scared me as a kid. So maybe that's why it's like on the shameful bronze tier instead of the so-so silver. But I just, it was a very disturbing final episode because you never really saw stuff like that. It's much
So
like
what you're saying is you're wrong because you're a wuss.
Sure. Yeah. If that makes you feel better, fine. But yeah, it's kind of like that last joke, like we were talking about, like surely someone will come to save the Simpsons. Nope, y'all dead. So what are your final thoughts?
It's gonna work out for the kids, right?
Yeah. So what are your final thoughts, bud?
This is an absolute fucking classic. It is one of those that I just love from beginning to end. When I put it on for this, to do a little watching for this episode, I just immediately started cracking up. And I have seen this more than probably any other Simpsons episode, save maybe a couple. And I was so excited to record. I love the shinning, the brutality of Homer's missed opportunity when it's raining donuts right after he leaves his perfect family, and there's a little Uber in all of us. I just love this episode.
Yeah, it's a good one. So, all right, well, great job, me.
Great job, us.
There you go, Robin. Do you hear that sound?
What's that, Josh?
Well, you know what time it is. It's the
Krusty Brand Seal of Approval. I almost forgot Krusty Brand. I was like, wait, what did we say here?
It's in the script.
Oh, yeah.
So to no one's surprise, I'm giving this a 5.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
5. Yeah. I mean, we've already talked about why we like it so much. I don't think we need to dive
it's unbelievable. The horror bits of it are really horrible, and the juxtaposition of that against this comedy heightens the whole thing to phenomenal levels.
It also shows that you can watch The Shining in like a 5-minute set, and still get the gist of the plot.
You get everything. My favorite line of the whole thing is, all work and no TV and no beer make Homer something.
Absolutely.
Go crazy? Don't mind if I do. I love that line.
Also, I wonder how many takes. I mean, now we're rehashing old stuff, but I'll move on in a minute. But I wonder how many takes Dan had to do to get that, like the noises right.
Oh God, everybody was having so much fun on this episode, and Lisa had almost nothing to do. Bart didn't even. He was bigger in the last episode, but this was a lot of
Homer. A lot of Homer.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And then in the last one, interestingly, was really all about Skinner and like Lunch Lady Doris or whatever her name is.
They were like a tag team. The
like
little Bonnie and Clyde.
How often do you get? I mean, you get a couple Skinner episodes, but Lunch Lady does not make it all that often.
No, she's usually a throwaway joke. Just like, why is the cafeteria lady also the school nurse? I get 2 paychecks this way. So yeah, and also I kind of think it works. So maybe we'll find the later episodes. Maybe they'll have a little bit more Doris in them. I don't really recall off the top of my head.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's a wrap for Sacrilicious with Robin and Snerts. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're feeling generous, then please leave a 5-star review with a few sentences. We are currently on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. Here are my shout outs for the episode: the PSVG Network. I have a lot of fun with these guys. They got me into podcasting with being a host on the PlayStation Experience, and the Discord is very active. And there's a bunch of cool people from diverse backgrounds, and it's a really encouraging community to be a part of. And I just wanted to shout that out and say, like, hey, thanks for bringing me into the family. The Tales of the Forgotten Network. I love what Crystal is doing over there with her partner Pixel. Her real name is Hannah. I remembered. I should have wrote it down. Sorry. But if you're in the spooky season and in the spooky mood for some audio dramas, they have some good horror ones called Don't Look, Always Listen to Your Weird Uncle, and Vampire Beginning. So I highly encourage you to check out their work. And they are also on all the networks like the Spotify, the Apple Podcasts, and all that kind of stuff. And of course, Dr. Moxford, the raddest fan of them all.
The Doctor.
Want to hear more from your old pal Snerts? Then check out the PlayStation Experience on your podcast platform of choice. I can also be found on most of the things at Lord_Snerts. Robin, what do you got for us today?
Josh, this is our 15th episode. And I just want to talk about how cool that is, my brother. I was so excited to do this recording today for this episode. And I think that says something that I'm getting more and more excited every time we do this. And I want to thank you for that. And I really thank our listeners. Tell your friends.
Yeah, I think also we've kind of found our groove the last couple episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really enjoyed delving on as a guest, and we had all that background talk with Michael Jackson, and then we had the baseball episode with all that kind of stuff. So I really kind of feel like we're finding our flow, and hopefully we can keep that going. Of course, now when I'm in post-production, I'm going to be like, well, this was a waste of time. I'm going to cut all this out. Worst episode ever.
It's crap. Most of it's crap anyway, Josh.
Also, I guess we should give everybody a heads up. We have one more episode that we're going to be recording for the calendar year. And then we're going to be taking the second half of November through December off to take a break and do the holidays and be with friends and family. So our goal is to get the next episode out on Sunday, November 10th. Robin picked Homer's Phobia from season 8. So that would be a nice way to end out as a fantastic episode for the calendar year.
It's super gay, Josh.
Our season will go through March. And then we will start season 2 in April because that's our anniversary date. So we will be back in January. I hope everybody has a wonderful Halloween, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas, New Year, etc., etc., etc. So until next time, folks, smell you later, true believers.
Smell you later, true believers. Excellent.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.